our new look for our ceiling. But there were a few things that we had to do here to get started. One was to recap the existing ceiling with new drywall. This was the existing plaster ceiling that was just not salvageable. So we installed this half-inch drywall cap throughout the entire living room. To make up the difference in elevation, we installed this wood molding around the perimeter of the living room, and then came over and capped over the drywall and the wood trim with our polyurethane molding with the Rococo design. Now this space right here at the corners are reserved for some wonderful elaborate medallions. Now ornamental composition has been around for literally hundreds of years. And what we're using here is called an Italian compo because after it's made, it cures into a very rigid state. The only way to make it more pliable or more workable is to steam it. And that's where this little apparatus comes into play. We have a 2-burner stove, and on top of that, a large roasting pan filled with water. We've constructed a frame just out of 2x2s, and across that, we've stretched some unprimed duck canvas. Moisten the canvas a little bit, and then take the appliques, set them on the top, the back side down, on the canvas. Now, the steam is going to help activate the resin in these appliques, and then you'll be able to bond them to almost any surface. It's a good idea to use something to pick them up with. That's not going to burn you because they do become very hot. Set those down on a piece of cardboard to blot out the excess moisture. Then you can take them up and set them on the wood. An adhesive material is applied evenly to the back of the decorative wood trim. A few finish nails will hold the trim in place while the adhesive sets. When the frame is complete, the center is marked off with a chalk line. Next, an outline is traced around our decorative appliques. Once the appliques are ready, they're removed from the steamer and set carefully in place. And the process is repeated for each additional piece of our decorative appliques. Well, the ornamentation on the ceiling looks great, doesn't it? And we've got a lot more to do here at Harlow House, not only by applying more composition, but we'll also be working on some plaster ornamentation as well. And speaking of plaster and compo, while we were in Chicago a while back, we had an opportunity to visit one of the oldest manufacturers of both these products here in the United States. So take a look. Well, Jack, how you doing?
Hi, Mitchell. Welcome to Chicago.
Well, thank you very much.
This is our vault. We keep all of our original hand carvings in here. There's approximately 16,000 of them.
This is a wonderful place. This is incredible. It's dark, like a dungeon.
Almost like that, yeah.
And these are all the original carvings?
Yeah, these are all the original carvings done for the company. They were done between 1890 and give or take 1920. Most of them were done out of either walnut or red oak.
Is that right? Now, these are beautiful. Some of these just look so old and dusty, like they haven't been used in years.
Well, some of them haven't been out of the drawers in years.
Is that right?
Yeah. We only pull them out when we have to fix a mold or replace a mold.
So what happens from this point, then, once they do these carvings?
Well, the original carvings were done, and then from there, for the composite, because we do make two different types of material from it.
Oh, is that right?
We make composite and wood fiber. What we do off the hand carving for composite is we use a maple block mold or a base that we take and route out a cavity in. This is actually asphalt or asphaltum, same thing you drive to work every day.
They just fill this hole up with this?
They fill it out, they melt it down, similar to like bread dough, and then they press the carving into it numerous times.
Oh, so this would actually fit right in there?
It fits right in like a glove.
That's nice.
And we'll multiple press it in there till we get a good image.
So you don't take the casting off the originals all the time?
No, we only use the molds. Now these molds are stored upstairs in a special room that we have up, and they're all cross-referenced with mold numbers. That,
oh, there it is right there.
So when we get an order, they'll pull the item out. One guy will go up and pull the mold, and we'll do the casting.
Okay.
Now, if you look around the rest of the vault, these are all lead and copper molds. These were done with the lost wax process. This is for another material called wood fiber. Now the fiber, unlike the composition, is not pliable. It can only go on a flat surface.
This is actually a wood in
Actually a wood type of base to it. And we cast that under heavy pressure. That's why we use the lead and the copper
These
molds.
things weigh about 75 pounds.
It's a good workout when you carry those around.
What are all these little brads in here?
The small holes are for installation. When you do the casting, you get the holes in the finished piece, and it can be bradded on.
Oh, so I actually press this down into this mold. I guess that's why it has to be so
Heavy. We use a hydraulic press for that.
Oh, I see.
This was developed primarily for the furniture industry because they could buy it and stock it because this is a stockable product.
Oh, I see.
The composition is not. It's all made to order, such as this piece here, which is a casting of this hand carving right here.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Two of them.
So then this is made of the composite, and this is a certain type of material, then it's just pressed into this
Just
form
hand
here.
pressed in, correct.
Well, can we see that process?
Sure, no problem. Let's go over to the shop. Okay, Mitchell, this is the composition material right out of the oven, mixed with the whiting. Now he's cutting sections off to fit into the mold. This is the maple block mold like we saw earlier,
Right.
with the release agent in it. He's pressed the material in it. Now he's going to put a board on the top. Put it right over here in a screw crank. And what he's going to do is tighten it down to get the press of the reverse image.
Oh, I see.
Well, from here it'll sit on the shelf for about a half an hour to 45 minutes. Once it's set up hard enough, what they do is we've got a large machete
Whoa.
that they'll draw through right underneath the piece to cut the image off.
You been doing this long?
Not that long.
That's great. There's a lot of hands-on work then, isn't it?
A lot of hands-on work. This product will dry then over a period of 24 hours, and the next day we'll put it on cardboard.
Well, that's a nice big relief.
Yeah, it's a large piece. This takes a couple days to dry.
Oh, I see.
These are smaller, these are taped down, and this is how we'll ship it off to the customer.
He's mixing the plaster now. He will pour it in, and then we'll begin to put the sisal hemp fiber in there to reinforce the cast so it doesn't break. Mitch, over here, we've taken that large molding we worked with before, and we put a cast in here. It sat in here for 20 to 30 minutes. It's dry, and it's ready to be demolded.
Wasn't the trip to Chicago interesting, seeing how composition appliques and plaster has been made almost still the same way today as it was hundreds of years ago? And it's interesting, when we were there, we have this large cornice system here in our living room. And we had some missing and some damaged composition because it's not wood, it's just faux to look like wood. These are actually all applied ornamentation. So we started looking through some of the catalogs to try to match some of these missing pieces. And what we found was really exciting. We not only found something that closely matched, but it was the exact replica of what was up here. So fortunately for us, there are companies today that still make these pieces, and no doubt that company in Chicago was the ones that furnished our house with our composition over 60 years ago. So we're going to go ahead and remove this and get this area prepped to install our new applique. First, we remove the original pieces and all the old nails. Once all the old nails have been removed, we'll prep the area, clean it with a naphtha. Next, we place our new piece on our steamer until the steam activates the resin in the appliques. When the applique becomes pliable, it's ready to be installed. Once it's set in place, it's wise to use a few finish nails to hold it, especially if you're working on a vertical surface. I would recommend that you remove the excess resin as soon as possible. Now, that about wraps up all of our appliques here in the living room. It looks great, doesn't it? And it matches exactly the other corner we have over there on the other side of our cornice. Now, later we come back in here and we'll stain this so that it all matches. We also have some other work here that we're doing in the living room besides the composition. We're installing a lot of plaster, and they're working on that now down at the other end. As you noticed from our trip to Chicago, one of the most interesting things is that there's still a lot of hands-on work when it comes to making plaster enrichments. And fortunately for us today, a lot of these enrichments can be made in large castings. Castings make it a lot easier to install because it limits the amount of time that you have to spend putting up individual pieces. Once the piece is laid out, it's very important to locate any backing that may be in the ceiling. Of course, when you're doing new work, plan on that ahead of time. Once the bonding agent is cured for a few hours, there's various methods that you can use to adhere or provide a bond for the enrichment to the ceiling itself. Of course, there's gypsum, which is used extensively in a lot of restoration work when you're using hand cast ornamentation. We can use joint compound like what we have here, or you can use some tile setting material or some drywall adhesive. We'll just lay a skim coat of this over the enrichment. Then when you install it, it's actually the screws that are going to hold the piece in place. Once the joint compound has been applied to the back of the plaster castings, it's ready for installation. The castings have been pre-drilled and wood screws are used to secure the piece to the solid backing that's been previously installed in the ceiling. Be patient though when screwing the piece to the ceiling. Tightening the screws too much could fracture the casting. Well, with the medallion complete, this sort of finishes our living room. We have a little bit more work here to do, and while we're finishing that up, I want you to take a trip with us to Newport, Rhode Island. We visited a wonderful Beaux-Arts style mansion there called Rosecliff that's reputed to have one of the largest ballrooms in America, and it has a ceiling that's second to none. Take a look. Okay, you just need to go ahead and wipe these down. The picturesque village of Newport, Rhode Island. Each year, more than 800,000 tourists flock to this tiny New England seaport. They come because, in a sense, this town is a museum of American architecture.
Newport, as early as the 19th century, liked to label itself the queen of resorts. It really could be called the earliest of America's summer resorts. Back in the late 18th century, there were a good deal of Southern families who came here to avoid the fever scare during the height of the sultry summer days. Gradually, after the Civil War, with the rise of new post-Civil War industrial fortunes, all that began to change. The new fortunes, in order to be received by what was called the Old Guard, decided to arrive and attempt the Newport season. In order to be received by the Old Guard, they had to receive them on a grand and ever grander scale. So thus, the houses of Newport began to grow according to the tastes of the 19th century in order to fulfill the ever-changing social aspirations of an ever more affluent society. Rosecliff is really the great late McKim, Mead, and White house in Newport, built between 1898 and 1902 for an heiress to the Comstock Road silver source, Teresa Fair Ulrichs. Rosecliff really is a summation of Stanford White's interpretation of the Beaux-Arts style. The porcelain glazed terracotta surfacing material of Rosecliff harkens back to White's appreciation of the textural possibilities of the Italian Renaissance, a rather dramatic yet subtle nuance in shading. The triumph of McKim, Mead, and White's floor plan in Rosecliff is the ballroom, which when completed was in its day considered to be one of the most successful entertainment chambers in the city of Newport. The use of this interior in, again, an evening setting when the baccarat crystal chandeliers would cast a soft afterglow on the trompe-l'oeil ceiling canvas, the illusion of being in this chamber looking overhead with a romantic sunset sky floating by over the dancers as they were whirled around the dance floor, and you realize how effective this chamber was for the social aspirations of Teresa Fair Ulrichs. The Salon of Rosecliff was really the first of the ground floor reception rooms. The room itself is an interesting exchange between Stanford White and, yet again in this instance, the Paris decorating house of Jules Lallard. What one encounters in the Salon of Rosecliff is a cast plaster chimney hood Renaissance revival The walls were fitted with tapestries that were cut to scale in order to conform to the geometry of the wall elevations, tapestries that were replaced by subsequent owners in the 1940s with the current silk damask. The chandeliers alone dangling from a Renaissance revival Crawford ceiling harken back to the Louis XV revival theme intended by White. The staircase is one of the most dramatic and effective of McKim, Mead, and White's processional spaces. Here the contrast in materials is extremely subtle. Very little of the gilt bronze, the marble, the faux treatments of the elms or of Marble House. Here there is a subtlety and a sense of soul, animation, and a unity of color and light. This manipulation of light no doubt leaves one with more of an aftertaste at Rosecliff than in any of its contemporary or slightly earlier Newport rivals.
Back at our house in Jacksonville, Florida, work in our living room ceiling is complete. The plaster enrichments and decorative appliques combine to create a work of art on our fifth wall. The decorative elements surround our beautiful medallion set in the center of our room.
Wayne, I see you found one of the areas that I wanted to talk to you about. We have this condition throughout the house, and I really wasn't sure how to go about addressing this.
Well, this is kind of unique, Mitch. This is a canvas wallpaper, kind of, if you want to call it that, that's applied over drywall. And back in the 30s, drywall didn't really come finished, pre-finished. It didn't come with a facing paper, as it's called. So they would apply the canvas paper over top of the drywall to uniform it, to give it some consistency so that when you decorated it, you wouldn't have to worry about seeing the imperfections through the drywall. The recommendation would be to remove as much of this as possible, skim the wall, prime the wall with a good quality Alkyd primer, and then come back with a latex top coat would be the recommendation.
Here in the foyer, the walls were concrete, so we decided that it seemed that service was pretty stable, so we decided to skim coat over the entire system. And it seems to be working pretty good.
Well, as you can see, Mitch, the areas where you've skimmed over the old paint, it looks very raw. It looks good. It looks great. The canvas seems to be adhering very well to the concrete, and the old paint seems to be adhering very well to the canvas. So you don't have any loose paint or checking or flaking paint. It's just cracking a little bit. So what the recommendation would be is to skim the whole wall, come back with a good quality Alkyd undercoater, and then top coat with your latex flat wall paint.
Well, Wayne, this is our dining room in here. What do you think about this?
Unbelievable. This is absolutely beautiful.
Isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Well, this is a concern as well because it has some finish on it that we really haven't been able to identify, and before we put a new coating on it, we need to know what's going to be acceptable.
First off, it looks like to me that there was a varnish used, but the first thing I want to look at is the application of the stain. You notice there's a lap mark here in the middle of the wood where, to me, indicates that it was applied by rag, by hand. As far as the top coat, it looks to me as it was a varnish of some form or some type, because shellacs would not have been applied by rag. They would have been more so applied by brush. And we don't see the indication, even with brush marks, which still have been evident today, or curtains or runs that are in the wood. There are none. It's a pretty smooth, good-looking job.
In order to duplicate this finish, this hand-rubbed finish, we were thinking about using an HVLP system to spray it on rather than brush it or roll it.
An excellent choice of application, especially with clears. You don't want to put a lot of air in clears. An HVLP, which stands for high volume, low pressure application, will give you that smooth, uniform finish. It won't create a lot of air in the application part of it, so therefore you won't see little pinholes in your film. And using a waterborne polyurethane may even be better off because you get easier application, it's easier to clean up, and plus it's a pleasing finish. It really looks good, especially in a satin sheen.
So a couple coats of denatured alcohol to clean it, and then we're ready to go.
You ready?
Well, I'm looking forward to getting this room started.
What a project.
First, we carefully remove the old canvas wall covering. After the glue resin is removed, the area is prepped by applying a thin coat of drywall patching compound to the surface to provide a smooth base. More than one coat will most likely be required, with sanding between the coats to assure a smooth finished base for the wall primer. After the wood trim and cabinetry in our living room were cleaned and prepped, we applied a water-based varnish. We selected a satin varnish to provide a subtle sheen to the surface, similar to the original finish. The same process is repeated in our dining room. The varnish, when sprayed with an HVLP gun, must be applied evenly with a constant motion to prevent any lap marks. The decorative medallions we installed in our dining room are stained to match the existing wood trim, then sprayed with a satin varnish as well.
The interior decoration of homes of this style incorporated a variety of classical elements and a sense of the theatrical. So in introducing new designs and new products to an old home such as Harlow House is a very sensitive process, especially when one is wanting to emulate a specific style or a certain period look. As an example, our new ceiling was designed not to fool anyone, but to give one a sense of what it could have looked like or perhaps should have looked like. The new ceiling is more subdued than most that we'd seen in our travels, but its scale is well suited for the size of this room, although quite a bit more decorative than it was before. And the refinished woodwork helps us to gain appreciation for the craftsmen that worked here many years ago. Thanks to the age-old art of composition, even the repairs to the appliques on the cornice are practically invisible. But our work here at Harlow House is far from being complete. The next time you visit us, we'll take a look at the installation of our new flooring for our living room, our dining room, and our foyer, and other parts of the house.
Plus, we journey north to Cincinnati, Ohio, the Queen City, and visit some wonderful Beaux-Arts style homes. And we'll pay a visit to Casa Italiana, a tile and marble importer in Jacksonville, Florida, to make selections for our new flooring.
I'm Mitchell McDaniel for today's Classic Homes. I'll see you next time.
Funding for today's Classic Homes has been made possible by the following corporations.
This program is made possible by Pella, makers of classic windows and patio doors, bringing you style and innovation since 1925.
And by your neighborhood Sherwin-Williams store. With paint, stain, wallpaper, and decorating ideas, Sherwin-Williams can help you create all the looks you've imagined.
And by DuPont Corian, used in commercial and residential applications worldwide, including new applications like furniture, lighting, and architectural details. Corian, looking beyond the surface for ways to express your design and performance needs.
Made possible by Hartco Quality Wood Flooring Company, makers of Pattern Plus 5000 and other sliced cut hardwood flooring products.
To order a copy of this program, please call 1-800-256-4408 or send $19.95 plus $4 shipping and handling to the address on your screen. Please specify episode number 208 when ordering.
This is PBS.